Thank you, everybody, for joining the webinar today. Again, my name is Dave Costello. I'm the president here at Pledge It, and been so fortunate to have one of our great partners, Hope Story, Rick Smith, executive director of Hope Story, to talk about endurance programs and some of the things do a little bit of education on what are endurance programs, how to build them, what does the model look like, and share a little bit about kind of how Pledge It can be a great tool to support some of the great things you can accomplish through endurance fundraising. So again, just introduced ourselves. So Rick, I'll give you a second just to kind of give people some background on yourself and Hope Story for in terms of understanding kind of your history and your connection to the cause. So go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, so I just kind of in a nutshell, about 15 years ago, a little over 15 years ago, we were surprised to learn that our firstborn son was born with Down syndrome. And so in 2018, we started an organization called Hope Story that provides no-cost resources to new families whose children have been diagnosed with Down syndrome, along with the medical providers that care for those families. And so my wife's a medical doctor here in Dallas, and so we really have a heart for the medical community and new families. And so we launched in 2018, and I was, I guess you could call a recreational runner. And I had, long story short, um, we began to do charity running with one race, and that really set a trajectory for us to continue to do so, to continue to grow that program. And now running charity events have actually become part of our, actually our programming here. And so you'll learn more about that later on. But we work with medical providers and provide resources for them. We work with new families and provide resources for them. And then we also kind of a third way that we connect with the communities around the country and really around the globe is through our running initiative, where we actually pair all of our runners up with a child with Down syndrome we call Champions of Hope, and we help disseminate information about Hope Story and about Down syndrome through our charity running programs.
Excellent, Rick. Yeah, and you and your team accomplished some great things, and we'll certainly get into those details. And again, appreciate you joining and sharing some of the things as your organization has grown, some of the things that have helped you grow, maybe some of the lessons learned, so we can kind of share that with our audience here today. So again, just a few housekeeping items. This is a pretty informal conversation, so we'd love it if folks have questions. Feel free to pop into the chat. We'll do our best to answer those along the way. And yes, we will distribute the slides afterwards. So if you've missed this, or got a colleague maybe who wanted to check in, we will distribute everything afterwards. So feel free to use the chat. And with that, we will jump in. So just to kind of set the stage here. So again, just to kind of help, give some backdrop to what we're talking about today. What is endurance fundraising or charity bid fundraising? And so, kind of offer a little bit of context here for what we're talking about. And, this is really, the opportunity, to drive fundraising through kind of prestigious sold out, endurance events. Most common is marathon, half marathon, there are ultra events, but really, there are three folks involved, or three sets of parties involved in endurance fundraising. We've got race organizers, and they set aside a specific number of bibs or slots, for nonprofit partners to participate in their events. And the key there is, they allocate these bibs that are, essentially withheld from being accessed through the general public, right? So these are bibs that the race organizers set aside exclusively for nonprofits for nonprofits to leverage as part of driving, participation in the event. Then nonprofits, once they have access to those bibs, right, they can market those bibs, they can evaluate and identify kind of who are the top, maybe most highly motivated individuals, fundraisers who are likely to raise money for the cause. And so there's a kind of a connection here where the race organizer makes the bibs available, the nonprofits market those bibs, and then the runners or athletes can then apply to those nonprofits to secure those bibs, and often they're committing to a specific fundraising amount, right? So kind of a guaranteed model, kind of guaranteed fundraising. And those fundraising minimums can range from a kind of a couple of $100, up into thousands or even tens of thousands for certain exclusive races. So, Rick, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I think
Yeah.
you nailed it. I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And so really kind of why does the model work? I mean, hopefully it start to kind of make the connections here, but for participants, for yeah, we're really providing access, right? Access and purpose for running. So some of these races are incredibly competitive, whether it's the Chicago Marathon or the New York Marathon or Big Sur or Disney races. These races are incredibly competitive to get into, and participants may apply for years and really never secure a slot. But kind of the charity bib angle provides an opportunity for those runners to secure participation in the race, but also then give greater purpose to their training because they're raising money for nonprofit organization. For nonprofits, there's kind of an obvious benefit, and Rick, certainly you're welcome to add your perspective. But there's obviously the kind of the guaranteed fundraising and the revenue portion of this, but there's also the real reach, by expanding the network. Someone who signs up for one of these races. For most people, committing to run a marathon may be the most significant thing they've done in their life in the last 3, 4 years. And so it's often a 6 to 9 months, sometimes a 12-month journey. And they're sharing their story as they're training and they're out there fundraising, they're spreading word about the cause. So it's a real kind of, there's a marketing, a visibility for the organization. It's a great way to drive that. And then for the race organizers themselves, obviously they've got this strong cohort of people who are running there, but there's real impact into the community. It really adds a flavor of it's not just a race. There's a big chunk of participants here who are highly committed because they're there to really to showcase and celebrate the fundraising success and celebrate the success of finishing the race. They're not necessarily there just to compete to have the best time. Yeah. So Rick, anything you want to add kind of directly from the nonprofit perspective of why this model works so well for you all?
Yeah, I think also it's just to kind of piggyback what you said. Sometimes people will we're in Dallas, Texas, and sometimes people will ask us like, "Hey, do you do the the Dallas race or whatnot?" And we really don't. We really try to predominantly laser focus on destination type events or events that people can make a vacation out of or those sought after races. And so I think, yeah, there is something to that scarcity of like, hey, I can't get in, and hey, we can provide access. I think trying to leverage access is very important in this. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, you could, if I'm local to Dallas and you say to me, hey, Hope Story does, charity running for Dallas, and you can run with us and raise funds for the mission, someone I could see a lot of people just saying, hey, why would I do that when I could just probably go sign up on the website and I don't have to raise any funds at all, and I don't have to come to a team meeting. I don't have to do a Zoom call. I don't have to wear your gear. And so I think there is something really special about leveraging the that feeling of like, hey, there's no other way to do this. Like it would almost be impossible for you to do this unless you came with us. And so you'll hear more about this later, I think. But I think one of the things that we try to capitalize on is that my assumption is a lot of people sign up to run a race with Hope Story because you're going to hear we have over 1,000 runners coming up this next race season. I think over 1,600 runners. And I think people just find us on Google or whatnot. They want to run a race at Disney World. They want to run the New York Marathon or whatever. And they probably don't even know what we do. And so, we do team meetings and different things that you'll hear about later. But I do think a lot of people just sign up for races because they can't get in anywhere else. They don't probably really care about your mission. And so we really try to leverage that to educate people that may have just come across us and they don't know what the heck we do.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And I think, the education component you hit on, Rick's, really, really, it's a great opportunity to do so. So, so Rick, you shared a little bit about kind of obviously your connection and kind of what started the journey with Host Story for you. But yeah, kind of honing in a little bit on kind of endurance, we'd love to kind of elaborate a little bit on kind of how, why the first race, how did that come about? Just to kind of give folks an understanding
Yep.
of kind of what did it mean to do your first one for those that maybe haven't yet considered or considering doing this, maybe haven't yet taken that step.
Yeah, great question. So, my brother, I've always been a fan of New York City. My wife is from Colorado, and so she has not been a fan of New York City. She's a Colorado person. But I've always loved New York City. My brother and his wife live in the New York City metro area, and so I had ran the New York Marathon before we started Hope Story through another charity. So I had an experience running through a charity. I had experience running the New York City Marathon. And you just always kind of think, man, it would be amazing. I wonder what it would take to be able to do something like that. It seems so far out, so like I don't, I don't have any background in producing and creating fundraising events, so you don't really know. So we applied, kind of figured out what you need to do to apply to become a charity partner. And I believe we were denied the first year that we applied, which obviously is disappointing. And so we didn't give up. We kept going, and actually, somewhere around there, COVID actually happened too, and so there was a lot of just stuff happening at the same time. But I just kept going. I was like, hey, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to submit an application to become a charity partner again for our organization. And, I had a personal interest in running. I had a personal interest in New York. And I just thought, man, it'd be really great if we can combine all that with our charity and create an experience for people to run a world major and whatever. So we just kept going, past the discouragement of getting declined, and eventually got approved with, a fairly small team that first year. And, there's a lot to learn. I mean, I think sometimes, um, people, they want to wait till they have every single detail figured out before they move forward, and they want to, make sure everything is like completely fine. But the problem with that is that you'll never be able to get everything uh, perfect. And if you do that, if you get into that trap of waiting till you have it all figured out before you start, you'll never start, because the truth of the matter is, all of us who lead in any capacity always kind of in the back of our mind think, man, we don't even know what we're doing. We're just kind of learning as we go, growing as we go. And so I would just tell people that maybe are on the fence, they haven't started, is just start. Like, really just start. Like, you kind of, you can only do so much research, so much talking to people, so much thinking about it, so much processing it. And eventually you just have to go for it and say, you know what, I'm not going to have this all figured out. I am going to learn as I go. And so, yeah, that we kept going, got in, and that first year, was a learning season for us. And really every single race, as you'll hear later on, is a learning season for us. We're always surveying people, getting feedback, and trying to figure out how we can make it, that much better the next time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real good encouragement. I think for those of us that are planners and want to ensure that your supporters are going to have that, impeccable experience, because you're asking a lot of them. I think encouraging to take that leap and kind of get started and make sure that you're connecting with them and learning from maybe how to make the experience better year after year. Maybe just on the kind of economic side, maybe when you were getting started, Rick, what were, if you just think about like, what was kind of the initial commitment? Like, what were some of the things you said you were approved for a small team? What
Yeah.
did a bib cost you? And then how did you think about, setting your minimums? I mean, we could probably spend this whole webinar just talking about minimums, but just kind of the basic economics when you were getting started. How did you
Yeah.
look at those?
Well, honestly, I heard it said one time, creativity is forgetting where you saw it. And so I just piggybacked other charities that were doing it. I think I looked at other charities, um, and shout out to the National Society, the National Society Down Syndrome, NDSS, the National Down Syndrome Society. Sorry, they've just been great partners in this. We consider them great friends. They shared so much information. They've been so helpful. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I really just kind of learned from them. I think I just, looked at what they were charging, might have looked at what other people were charging for minimums, and kind of went with that. And, as we have grown, and as we have grown and also developed our program, we have, begin to increase things, because honestly, we've said, hey, we do good work. We put on a good program. We give people a lot of value, which you're going to hear us talk about a little bit later. It's not just transactional, it's relational, which is
Hmm.
key to all this. And so we now, I mean, I might look online just to kind of gauge what's out there, but, I, we, we're not afraid to increase. In fact, I'll share a little personal anecdote. This last year, we just finished Big Sur, and you know, in my mind, we never did Big Sur. So first time we've ever done Big Sur. They do an 11-mile race. They do multiple races. We had 11-mile bibs. We had marathon bibs, and I thought, you know what, Big Sur is going to be just like New York. People are going to be banging down the doors to get into Big Sur. So let's just, have, we can look at what other people do for Big Sur, but let's just set a big, $3,000 fundraising goal, which for New York this year, we charge $5,000, $5,000 commitment. But I said,
Hmm.
let's just do 3,000. Big Sur's great. And I'll be honest with you, we really had a hard time getting people to fulfill our bids. We had to reduce the fundraising commitments. I also learned that the 11-mile race was actually, I think, more popular, at least for us, than the
Okay.
marathon.
Right.
I learned that, at Big Sur specifically, there's a huge mountain right around mile 13. And if you run the 11-mile race, you skip that section, but you still get the beauty. And so what I learned from all that was, hey, you know what? Next year, let's get more 11-mile bibs and marathon bibs. Next year, let's not set the commitment for the marathon so high because we had trouble getting the bibs. And so a lot of it is trial and error and a lot of it is learning. And so it's like I had never done Big Sur. So you get out there, you see the race, you realize that people like to do the 11 miler, and you go, great. Who would have thought? I would have thought Big Sur marathon bibs were a hot commodity, and I
Sure.
did not plan on them being so hard to fulfill. And I think there's several reasons for that for us. But that was just an example of like, hey, sometimes you don't know until you get there. And so to kind of sum all that up, I would say a good starting point is to just do some Google searches. Chat GPT is really helpful on this and say, hey, what are other charities? What's their fundraising commitment? And you may start slow. And the other thing you have to remember too is you have to look and see what value those numbers have. And so if you see an organization like Hope Story and our commitment is $5,000 for the New York Marathon, and you go, you know what, I'm going to do the same thing. Well, what you have to look at is it apples to apples? So, like with Hope Story, we do a team dinner that we pay for. We do a shakeout run that our staff is at on Saturday morning. We do a team send off and a team breakfast on Sunday morning before the marathon. All of our runners get gear at no additional cost. That's included.
Sure.
So we have expenses built into that. So if you say, hey, I'm going to do 5,000, but I'm not going to do anything, well, that's not really apples to apples. So you kind of have to, I would say, look at the information out there, see what they offer, and then see how you can kind of compare to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. I'm thinking about the economics of the kind of the whole experience, and we'll certainly get into race day a little bit later in terms of what have you found was important to kind of build the experience that keeps bringing people back year after year. So from a kind of we've talked a lot about this. It's and you use the phrase it's relationship. It's not transaction based. It may start at that level. So I wanted to kind of dive into, how do you go about kind of building the right roster of people and identifying kind of the people that are going to ultimately be really connected to not just the access again, but being a real fundraiser,
Yep.
being an advocate for your organization.
Yep. So this is where I think I really have a lot of value to add to this conversation because we have thought about this. I think about this. We continue to learn and evolve with this. And I mean this in a very humble way. Truly, if you knew me, I truly mean this humbly. But I believe that if you run with Hope Story one time, you'll never want to run with another organization again. Not because there's not great organizations out there, but because we think similar to like I like to say like the Savannah Bananas. We like to try to create such a great environment. So one, we try to create such a great intentional relational environment that people feel like they're part of their family, that they feel like they know myself, my team, that we're friends. We take runners out to dinner when we're in town. We stay and we cheer every single runner to the very last runner on our team crosses the finish line. We stay out. So, like in New York City, we're there at dark time. We stay to the very end to all of our runners cross. And so, uh, so repeat runners are the key. And I
Hmm.
think, Dave, that a lot of people in this space look at this as transactional. They say, hey, all I know is I've got 25 slots and I need those 25. My boss wants me to get those 25 slots filled with 25 runners that are going to each donate $1,000. And if I do that, then I have done my job. Well, the problem is if you want to do it next year and you want to do it for other races, you're going to have to find 25 more people, 25 more people, and eventually you run out of people. So you got to figure out ways to keep those runners coming back. We have repeat runners that run the same race. We have one runner that I think this is her fourth time to run the New York Marathon with us. She just keeps coming back. She's amazing,
That's
but we've
awesome.
invested in her. So repeat runners are key. And then here's the second thing, and this is going to sound mean. This is going to sound meaner. This is going to sound like it has more energy behind it than I really mean. But you have to fire people sometimes. We have to tell people sometimes, like, hey, this is probably not the best fit for you. You're not allowed to apply for any more races with Hope Story. And so if we have runners that don't meet their commitments, that try to rip us off, they won't, we have to chase them down with 100 phone calls. Like, eventually we tell people, like, hey, we're investing if they're a jerk to your staff, and I don't mean they're just hard to, they just need a little extra care. But if someone's demeaning to your staff, or they, cursed at them, anything like that, it's like, hey, you know what? We actually don't want you to run with it. Like, you should go find another
Hmm.
organization to run with. And so as fast as you can weed out the people that aren't committed and that are going to cause your team to get burnt out, man, we fire people and just say, hey, this is not going to be a great, and not in a mean way. It's
Yeah.
just like, hey, this is not going to be a great
Yeah.
fit for you.
Yeah, they're not energy giving to what you're trying to create from an experience perspective. And that probably also has an impact. Other runners would see that and they probably also have an impact, right? So
Yeah.
has your vetting process, as you've kind of learned this and had to
Yep.
unfortunately, fire a few runners,
Yep.
have you altered anything from a vetting perspective, in terms
Yeah.
of how you think about finding those people?
Yep. So every runner has to fill out an application to run with us. So even if you've run with us 100 times, there is an application that you have to fill out. So you fill out the application, you give us some information, you say, like, hey, why do you want to run with Hope Story? Kind of give some information. And then our team sort of keeps an eye out. We have someone on our team that's dedicated to this. And we can see, like, hey, because sometimes I'll give you a perfect scenario. Sometimes people may go through and select like three or four, multiple races. And those fundraising commitments can really add up when you have multiple places, and they don't just add up, they actually take a slot from someone who might actually be fully committed. So someone takes three or four slots, they have a gigantic fundraising commitment, because those are all combined. Or a family has multiple family members and they're all combined and it's a crazy number. So for Disney, we do Dopey Challenge. That's four races. Our fundraising commitment for that, I think, is $2,500. So if you have a family of, two adults, and then they want their adult children to run with them, that's 2,500 times four. You're at, what is that, $10,000
It's
now.
$10,000.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get something like that, and then you come to find out, oh, wait a minute, that family actually defaulted on their fundraising commitment to two previous races, and we tried to call them. Maybe we have, Pledge It allows you to put notes in there for previous folks, and you go, hey, maybe we can see in our notes that we emailed and called them 47 times. They ignored us. Their card was declined. They put down a fraudulent, they made up a card number, whatever it is. And so, yeah, so I think you do well to keep a list of, folks that you go, hey, this is sort of on my do not call list. Like, if they apply, um, you just, and it's not mean, but it's just
Hmm.
saying, hey, you if you're going to continue to have problems, and here's the way I think about it too, is no matter what your job is, if you're working with the charity running program, you are in a sense you have a financial responsibility to your organization to see that all your runners meet their fundraising commitments. And
Yeah.
so I was telling Dave, when we were talking a while back, is that sometimes it feels mean when we hold people to standards. But it's not mean to say, hey, you signed up, you told us this is what you were going to do, you didn't do it. Maybe we showed some grace also, and you continue to not do it. And we're at this point, if you're not going to follow through on what you said, then I mean, it's not us firing you. You basically fired yourself by not following through. And so I think having a list of folks, especially as you grow and have more runners and those runners are doing repeat runs with you, having some sort of system or process to say, hey, you know, flagging people in your system or whatever to say, hey, this person isn't just high maintenance, because at times we're all high maintenance, but this person is actually insubordinate to, in a sense. And so, like,
Sure.
this is not good.
Yeah, and I think too, and we've got a good question about, there's a kind of, maybe you can elaborate on it too, Rick. Thanks, Jessica, for the question. I think one of the things that she's learned that they take a credit card for their endurance races, and so there is a credit card on file. Rick, you want to elaborate on kind of how you all look at the credit card? Because I know
Yep.
I know that's a big element of how you look at it, not just up front, but then also how you keep people on track.
Yeah, what is the example? Okay, I'm looking at the Q&A. So we have to start a credit card at the beginning. We let them know. We'll charge them for the difference. Yeah, so here's what we do. A great question, Jessica. You got to do it. So for us, the way we structure it is we used to send manual DocuSigns to every runner. Now, can you imagine manually making DocuSigns for 1,600 people and then following up with them? So we've incorporated that into our Pledge It process. And so when someone signs on, we are very explicit up front to say, hey, you are responsible for this fundraising commitment. This is not transferable, not cancelable, and you cannot cancel or transfer this race. And we try to be incredibly consistent about it. That we could get into a whole nother conversation about. So what that means is because if you have 1,600 runners and 10% of those runners sign up and quit, that's 160 runners. And if those 160 runners have a $500 commitment and you've paid for those bibs in advance, that's a lot of funds that that you have kind of not coming into the organization. So we try to be very consistent with it. We try to let people know so they're not surprised. And then yes, right away we require a credit card commitment. We give people two deadlines, a 50% deadline and a 100% deadline. And Pledges has been so great to incorporate some of the feedback that we share with them. And one of the pieces of feedback that we shared is like, hey, it would be really helpful for our team if we could charge people at sort of two milestones in their journey with us. One would be the 50% deadline. The second would be the 100% deadline. And so where this is really great is this. So if you sign up to run a race with us January 1, for instance, I'm making this up. Well, we might say, hey, you have to have the fundraising half of that done by June 1st. If you don't, what we'll do is we'll charge the credit card to get them up to 50%. Here's where that's helpful. It's helpful in the sense that we get their fundraising caught up, but two, what we have found from our experience is if someone doesn't meet their fundraising commitment, typically their credit card is going to get declined. That's just sort of my hunch is if we're having a hard time, they don't talk to us, they don't answer our call, they don't return our email. When we go to charge that card, it's going to get declined. So here's what's great is if you do a 50% mark and you say we're going to charge your card at the 50% point, if their card is declined, we now have a long runway to find another runner to take their bid. And for all of our Disney races, we don't give them the link to register until they hit their 50% mark. So if they don't hit the 50% mark and their credit card is declined, all right, see you later. You're not able to run with us again. That puts you on our sort of you're not allowed to run with us list internally. And we're going to go recruit another runner. We're going to sign them up. And so, yeah, so I think credit cards are a must because you have no recourse. If someone signs up, ties up all your organization's funds, and then they don't raise the funds, there's nothing you can do because if you say, hey, Sarah, I'm going to pull your bid from you, they don't care. They're like, hey, do it. I don't care. And now you're stuck trying to find someone to fill that slot 2 weeks before a race and hoping they can fundraise in 2 weeks and that they're trained up to run a marathon in 2 weeks. So you have to have some sort of system in place to release people earlier in the process that are going to be problems towards the end of the process.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. You said you're sort of giving yourself as an organization the ability to be responsive and to essentially alter path if someone for whatever reason is not able to meet that commitment. I think that the idea that you're giving yourself that 6 months or that 4 months to have a new bid has been I know it's been a real game changer for your organization. So again, we're kind of, and you've touched on some of this, Rick. I want to make sure to keep us moving. So keeping fundraisers on track. You've talked about obviously kind of there's that 50% fundraising deadline. That's a very kind of clear, kind of bright white line for your organization. I was curious if you could talk about what does that communication cadence look like, right? Because as you've referenced, it can be a 6 month, 9 months sometimes. People sign up sometimes a full year in advance. So what does that kind of at a high level communication cadence look like? And we know, we know you've got, several different things that you leverage
Yeah.
for different races.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Pledge It makes it very easy because in Pledge It, you can actually send messages from your runners to your runners, your fundraisers directly from the tool, which is a game changer. So we were sending out monthly emails to every runner every month with their balance. And so obviously as you grow, you obviously cannot scale like that. So we would literally, and if you're small, I think this is the way to go is if you got 15 charity runners, people sign up for a race 7 months in advance and they think, well, the deadline, I'm a procrastinator. The deadline's not till December the 1st. So out of sight, out of mind. I'm going to start training in November for this December race, and I'm going to start raising money 10 days before the race. And so what we know is always right around that deadline, people's children get sick, their car breaks down, their dog needs to go to the vet. So we like to say, hey, we're going to try to remind you as early as possible and as often as possible to stay on your radar of what your fundraising commitment is and what the balance is and kind of information. So that way, when December rolls around and they say, oh man, little Spud, my doggy has to go get a haircut or, whatever. I can't pay the fundraising. It's like, hey, it makes it easier to say, hey, man, I've been telling you about that, man. We try to empathize. Hey, that's tough. I know that, you love your dog but we've been telling you about this for 6 months and this should not be a surprise. We've been sending you emails. You've never communicated us to this before. Um, you know, like, it's like, hey, we've been communicating this to you. Like you should have
Sure.
known. Like I know there's an emergency right now, but man, we've been talking to you since April, May, June, July, and you've not donated anything. So unfortunately, we are going to have. But at this point, the good news is we would have already attempted to charge them at the 50% mark. And if their
Right.
car was declined, we would have released them. And here's what else I know is it's a lot easier to get someone to go from 50% to 100% than to get someone to go from 0% to 50%. Because if you raise 50%, but then you don't raise that 100%, you still get dropped. But now you've donated 50% of your funds that we're not refunding to you. And even if we don't find another runner, we've probably recouped our costs with the 50%. But if we can, that 50% you've already donated. So getting that 50% is key because someone doesn't want to lose all of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're kind of committed. Yeah, they're committed
Yeah.
kind of financially at that stage. So is there anything that again, we've talked about the 50%. Is there anything else that you and your team look at to maybe spot who might be falling behind? I mean, certainly having that deadline, is there anything that you look at to try to identify folks who maybe you're a little concerned about, might need that extra nudge?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, I keep this is not sponsored by Pledge It by any means, but Pledge It offers so many great tools, reports, tools that you can, dig into. They have a tool that lets you message people specifically that I think raise 0 or 50%. So it kind of really, it's been really great in that regard because it makes it easier to look and be able to say, okay, because I think the people you really want to pay attention to are the 0%. So when you look and you say, hey, these 10%, they've raised $0. And then you start thinking these are the people I need to sort of invest in because they've raised $0. They haven't communicated with us. They've sent no emails. They've done no phone calls. And those are kind of what I think about as like red flag runners, where I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
that's kind of weird that we haven't heard from them. They haven't raised $1. They have a $10,000 commitment. Like, let's start. And then when you start following up with those people and you start trying to text them or email them and you get ghosted, kind of your spidey senses start going off like, hey, this could be a situation where we need to actually release. Because believe it or not, there are people out there who may try to fraud you. They may try to get, a bib and lie to you or con you. Those people are out there. And unfortunately, they're looking to take advantage of charities because they want to go run some of these races. And so, and if you're doing everything online and someone's coming to your charity, they're applying, I'm not taking anybody's driver's license. So anybody could come and apply and say they're, whoever. And so, I do think, looking at those tools and Pledge It, identifying your 0% runners that have raised $0. And then when people don't respond to emails, respond to texts, respond to phone calls, those are kind of like all the hot buttons where you go, okay, something just seems off right here that I may need to release you and then open up that slot to other potential runners.
Yeah, yeah, I think that it's good advice to personal communication. And so just to kind of keep us moving here, I know you've alluded to the kind of the race day and the experience race weekend, if you will, sometimes that you offer. would love for you to kind of share, hey, for you all have evolved in terms of how you organize your race day. What does a great race day look like? And then we can kind of follow it up with when do you kind of make that all important ask, hey, will you be willing to run with us again for in the future? So kind of
Yep.
curious to kind of focus on what race day looks like for your organization.
Yep. This is where I think we, credit to our team. And I think this is where we are very different than other charities. And I think where we shine is that we build everything up to that race weekend. So we, send all of our runners a playlist of music. So if they're going to New York, they get a playlist of New York hits to get them in that headspace on the way while they're traveling. If they're going to Disney, we curated a playlist with Disney songs. We send everybody a handwritten note with a swag box. So even up to the event, we're trying to get them excited. Then when we get there, this takes some investment, and if you're not the senior leader, you have to kind of lead up to your manager for this. But we say, hey, we want to invest. We want staff to be on hand. We at every race we have staff there, and I think every race. I don't think we've ever missed one. And we try to send multiple staff if we can. And we do. We try to do a social at every race where we can gather as a running community and get to meet our runners. We do a team meeting at Disney every single morning, very early, every day. We do a team meeting. Our team wears big backpack signs, and we stay on the sidelines for pretty much every race until the very last runner crosses the finish line on our team. We track them. We try to track all of them, but sometimes we have so many we can't track them all. But we try to stay out there for every last runner. We encourage them. We yell like crazy. We do a team dinner at some of these events. And on bigger races like Disney, we're going to have over 500 runners for marathon weekend. We can't take all of them to dinner, but we try to
Right.
invite maybe repeat runners or people we really want to invest in. Then, so that's going on all through the weekend. Uh, then, when we can, so maybe at our team social, at our team meeting, we tell people, hey, we love repeat runners. You're always welcome to let us know if you want to run another race. Then, right when we get back, we either like the next day or maybe the last day of the race or very close after that last race, we send a survey. And how was your experience? What was it? What would you tell someone? We really want to collect that feedback because you can't change what you don't measure. So we try to measure all of that. And did then we typically will say, hey, we'd love to have you. I think then we also send out an email with a link to our list of all our races because we want to capture that. We want to build that excitement where they're already excited. They just did it. They ran it. We celebrated them. It's still in their mind. It's sort of like when you're on a vacation and the timeshare guy tries to get you. We're not timeshare salesmen, but they're excited about it. So we want to
Sure.
capitalize on that excitement and say, hey,
Capitalize on
we'd
that.
love for you to come back again. But I will say, um, if if you because here's what I've heard before is people say, hey, I ran with such and such charity. All they did was send me a link to my fundraiser. I never heard from them. I never saw them. I never got an email from them unless it was about, the charity, the fundraising link. If that's what you call a transactional. Hey, I'm just doing a transaction with this person. It's just about them fulfilling their fundraising. If you do that, this is going to be a very hard thing to grow year over year. But if you say, hey, how do we make this relational? And how do we spend time with people? How do we encourage people? How do we truly become their friends? We have a staff member on staff at every race pretty much. I think all of them. They have a cell phone number to our staff member, and hopefully they don't abuse it. But we say we're here to help any way we can. If we can help in any way, you reach out to us. We're here almost as a liaison for you all weekend, and people don't really abuse it. But we really try to make it a team meeting. Someone said, we've attempted a team meeting via Zoom, but have found fewer able to do so. Um, do you provide running coaching? So here's what I'd say for our major races, New York, Big Sur, we tell people it's a mandatory meeting. That's it. Because now we have so many applicants, we say, hey, if you can't, because on that first meeting, the team is meeting each other. We're doing introductions. Like it's a true team experience. So it's like the first day at your job. If it's like if you miss it and you watch the recording, it's just not the same. And so we tell people, hey, you have to be there. And so actually, we just did the New York kickoff call. we had one person on a cruise ship, and we had another person that was running a marathon on another, in another country. So I had to have hard email conversations with them because when we sent them their congratulations email, we said attendance is mandatory at our kickoff meeting. If you're unable to make the meeting, please reply to this email before signing your commitment. And we held them to that commitment. And so I think every single runner was on our kickoff call because we held the value high and I had to have tough conversations. You know what happened? The person on the cruise ship bought a 1 day pass, Wi-Fi to join, and the person in the other country jumped in. But we give them lots of room to plan and we marked it on their calendar and we told them before you commit, this is the expectation. So one, I think you have to, hold the standard high. Now, like for Disney, we have 500 people. You're not going to get 500 people to a team meeting. So what we do is we do like kind of a kickoff call. We do a costume contest. So you wear a fun Disney outfit. We do a gift card giveaway. So we say, hey, if we're going to give 2 gift cards away or two, I think we gave hoodies away last time. We're going to give 1 gift card away we're going to pick a winner out of people who wore a costume. Then we say we're going to give a participation prize. And we're going to give that at the end of the call. So you got to stick around. And so we offer a little incentives and for people to come to the meetings for Disney. But I think both of those can work. Like one, incentives, two, mandatory team meetings. Because what we're trying to do is create an experience. We're trying to create a team feel. And if you have people that just want a transaction, they don't want to wear your stuff. So for New York, we require everyone to wear our kit because we want to be represented on the course. But if someone's like, hey, I don't want to come to the team meeting, I don't want to come to the team dinner, I don't want to wear your stuff, what I would say is, hey, this probably isn't the best place for you to run because
Right.
we're trying to create an experience for a team, not just take your money. We don't just want your check. We want you to be a part of a team. And so if that isn't what you're expecting, this probably isn't the best place to run because there are other charities that you can just mail them a check, they give you a bib, they don't ever want to see you again. That's not what we're trying to create. We're trying to create an experience that keeps people coming back.
Yeah, that's great, Rick. That's great. So you've talked a little bit about the tools for success, and we appreciate kind of the gracious the gracious compliments in terms of some of the things we're building. So I'm going to jump real quickly into we're kind of run a little short on time, so I want
Yep.
to jump real quickly into a kind of a quick demo, just at a very high level, some of the things
Yeah.
that we've built and created. But I think for a lot of this, you've talked, and a lot of the partners that we've worked with, there's this kind of continual challenge of I've got applicants somewhere, I've got this number of bibs, I'm trying to keep track of all this information. It's in spreadsheets, it's all over the place, and ultimately there's a lot of important deadlines, right? And there's a lot of important kind of workflows and time frames, and you need to be able to kind of stay on top of all of that. And when it's strewn across multiple places, it makes it real challenging, and it's really easy to miss an important deadline. And I think from an experience perspective, and Rick, you've emphasized this, you all try to offer such a premium experience, that if you're not organized on the back end, it makes it real tough on staff to know, well, who do I need to reach out to and who do I need to, to maybe to nudge a little bit when they're falling behind. So I'm gonna kind of just jump real quick. All right, so just this is the kind of the pledge it, kind of the application here. This is a fictitious big city charity bid race weekend, just to kind of give people a quick understanding of some of the things we've been focused on. And really, this is the kind of your one-stop shop, the place where you can ultimately organize all the information for a big event. So you can quickly stand up an event like this. And then you can create an application, so you can list the races that are part of that weekend. So I've got the big city marathon, I've got the half marathon. So if you've got multiple races here, you can customize and build a quick application form, right? So you can start to build that initial list of who's interested and who might be your great runners, and you can showcase what the minimum fundraising is, of when that commitment's due, and so you can have your participants quickly fill that out. And it's one-stop shop for them to quickly fill that out information, and then that feeds into your system. To one of the questions that we have in the chat, like, well, how do you keep track of all the people who've applied, right? So really, that's what we've tried to create here, is kind of a one-stop shop where you can organize. Here are all of my races, and here are my applications, so you can begin to see, okay, like, well, who's interested, and who wants to run. So this interface here shows you kind of, here are my races. I can see that in this scenario, I've got 2 bibs for the big city half marathon, and I've got 10 bibs for the big city full marathon, and I've got a bunch of different applicants. And so I'll just kind of walk through, like, what does this feel like All right, so I've got my applicants and I can jump right in and say, okay, I've got all of my applicants. And so, who's applied, what information have they provided? So, they fill out that application. I can quickly see, okay, well, what did they tell me about their connection to the cause? Why might, have they done a race like this before? Also, with one click, I can see, hey, how much have they raised as part of my organization previously? Because ultimately we hear a lot of what people are trying to accomplish for our nonprofit partners. They're trying to create a match. And you're trying to assess, hey, I only have 10 slots. Is Tonda in this case, is she really going to be one of my best chances, to raise money? And so, there's this ability to kind of scan and understand all of your inbound interests, and then you can rank and rate your folks at different levels, just kind of to categorize them to make them easy. So I'm going to say, hey, based on Tonda's questions and some of the conversations and notes I've taken, I think she's a pretty highly qualified person, to run. And so then you can look at all of your applicants kind of rated, ranked next to each other. I've got, obviously a bunch of examples here. And then you can say, all right, well, how many slots do I have left? Well, I've got one slot left for the big city half. I've got one slot left for the marathon. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to send Tana that invite code to really start fundraising for us based on what she's done. So I've got one slot remaining, right? I can say, hey, if this is a really in-demand event and you don't want to wait, you really want to kind of create some urgency. You can have the invite, expire, a couple of days. So I can, send that invitation. All right, so now Tana has a kind of a dedicated experience where she's going to get an email, be notified, and then from a tracking perspective, you can see on your dashboard, okay, hey, I've got all my slots filled. I can see who I've invited to race. They've registered, whether they've started fundraising. I can see who maybe my pending invitations are. I can see I just invited Tana to register. She obviously hasn't done so yet. And I can even kind of scroll down and see, oh, you know what? I've got somebody with an expired invite. So then I can pull that up and say, I've been in touch with Teresa. We haven't heard from her. I need to fill this slot. Someone else needs to start fundraising. So you can, kind of right from this interface, make it quick. And now you've opened up a new slot for someone to go ahead and fundraise. All right. So that's really kind of how you can manage the upfront application process. And then from a fundraising perspective, and Rick talked about this a couple of different times, you're really trying to keep track of what do those fundraising commitments look like. So when someone registers, they're putting that credit card on file, they're committing to raise dollars. So here in a quick snapshot, I can see how many folks. I've got 7 fundraisers committed. What is the total amount that I've expected to raise? So again, you can kind of predict and forecast what those revenue dollars look like. And then you've got a list of all of your whole roster of runners, and you can sort this to understand, okay, who are my best runners, and maybe who's fallen behind a little bit. So I don't have the kind of the 50% deadline, marked in here, but from some of the anecdotes that Rick has shared, Travis might be one of those folks that's on that list and saying, you know what? Travis really isn't getting it done. I've had a few phone calls. He knows that he knows that, he's got a deadline coming up. And right from here, you can create that charge with the credit card on file and say, hey, I'm going to charge Travis $4,000 today, because that's part of his fundraising commitment, and that gets him halfway. All right. So you can make that commitment charge, keeps that credit card on file. And now you've got a single interface where you're keeping track of everything that's going on across all of your runners. Right. So from from an organization perspective, you've got an application set up to manage all of your individual interests. And then once people commit and begin fundraising, you've got a nice clean interface here to quickly see who's ahead, who's behind. And then there's a host of messaging tools, that are available. Won't get into that. I'm certainly happy to, for those who are more interested, happy to go into that in more detail. As we go, after the webinar, we can talk more about, what that experience looks like. But you've got a system here where it allows you as an organizer to create an application, manage those applicants. You could manage your fundraising, and it's also a great fundraising tool for your individual participants, right? So I'll flip over here really quickly. So if I'm an individual runner, I can create my fundraising page right on Pledge It. So I've got my personalized fundraising page. I can see what my commitment looks like. Right from here, I can see that, okay, I've got a deadline coming up. I've made some progress, but I've got some work to do. And then as an individual fundraiser, I've got, lots of tools that Pledge It makes available for me to make it really easy to see, hey, I want to, with a single click, I want to invite a whole bunch of people to give to me. So I can quickly pop open and invite my past donors to give. All right. And I can send that right through the platform. And at the same time, I can be monitoring who's made those donations, and I can in one click, say thank you. Right. So really easy fundraising tools, really simple interface, right? So you have the tools in place to really help grow your program. So, yeah, wanted to go through that really quickly, but wanted to come back. That's what we've been building. That's what we've been focused on in Pledge It, based on talking with our partners. And I think Rick, you've hit on something, in our conversation where it's not just about the tools that you've got in place. It's really about kind of the human, kind of personal connection that really drives growth, for your organization. So, wanted to talk and kind of lean in a little bit more kind of as you think about growing your organization, how do you, I know it's one of the big challenges, and we've talked about this, how do you keep, that element of personal connection, right? Because keeping that personal connection when you have 500 participants does create some challenges. So I'm curious, maybe some of the tips that you might offer as you've started to grow, how you maintain that personal touch.
Yeah, good question. It's something that we're, I think, even today at our team meeting, talking about, thinking about. I think right away it is how much staff or volunteers can you get to come to these events, and so I think a lot of organizations, they may not see the value in sending someone to an event because there's airfare, there's hotel, there's a food cost, you're paying employees, they're hourly, you're paying them, and so or salary, and so there's a significant expense, and so for us, for some of these big weekends, we would love three staff members to be there, maybe even four staff members if you got 500 people running. And so obviously you can imagine the cost of sending four people to Orlando for, 5 days or whatnot. And so I think investing in that program, realizing like, hey, there's going to be ROI in these relationships that we're building. And you can't, one person cannot build relationships with the whole team if you're growing and whatnot. So I think having leadership is like, hey, I want to invest in this. I'm going to send my team to these events, and I was telling Dave too that, and I know that I'm sure there's no one like this on the call, but I go to a lot of events, and what happens that I see a lot is that people will go to events. Maybe their employer sends them there, and they don't stay at the event the entire time. Maybe they're not fully engaged. You look over at the charity, the organization's table, and they're gone, or they've already packed up for the day before the event is over. And so what I tell my team is that, hey, when we go on these running trips, because we go to Disney World, and we're paying our staff to stay in hotels. So I'm like, look, if you want to bring your family, your husband, your spouse, whatever, they got a free room. They can come. I would love for them to come and bring your family. But I want to set the clear expectation. This is a work trip, and we're going to be working a lot. And so it's going to be really hard to have family fun at Disney World because these races start early in the morning, and we need to be fully engaged and like with our runners. And so what I would say is, hey, if you're an employer or employee, is that when you go to these events to go, hey, I'm here for a work trip. And even though this race is in a cool location, I'm here to work and I'm here to build relationships with our runners. So for us, I'll tell you on one of our days I think it's Friday, what that looks like. We do a team meeting at 3:45 in the morning. Um, I'm in Texas, so that's 2:45 Texas time. So you have to get up around, you have to be on a 3 a.m. bus. That's a 2 a.m. bus Orlando time and Texas time. So you're getting up at like 1:30 Texas time. So we do a 3:45 meeting, Dave. The race starts at 5 o'clock. We stay out until the race is over. So or at least until all of our runners pass the finish line, which is until it's over.
Hmm.
Then we get back to the hotel, have a little breakfast, or try to take a nap for a second. And so after we've already done that, after we've been up at 3:45 in the morning, we do a team social from 3:30 to 4:30. We do a team photo at 4 o'clock. Then we typically take runners to dinner from, I think around 4:30, so 3:30 to 4:30. Yeah, like 5:15, 5 o'clock, we do an early dinner. So then we're at like an hour and a half or 2 hour dinner. Then we get back to our hotel and wake up early the next day. So literally
And
from the
do over again.
middle,
Yeah.
so well, we don't do the team dinner and the social every night, but we're up cheering our runners on. So we're
Yeah.
literally going from the middle of the night till bedtime, and it's hard work, but we're there to invest in the people. So I'd say you've got to go invest with the people and get FaceTime because if you're doing everything over email and phone, you just can't there's nothing beats a person to person like FaceTime with people.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And I know, and there's so much we could talk about. I want to make sure that we leave a little time to Q&A, so we're
Yep.
going to skip ahead here. If there are any questions that we haven't had a chance to, I'm going to pop open the Q&A, make sure I know we answered a few of them along the way. So I'll pull that up. And while I'm doing that, Rick, maybe a kind of a quick question for you. You talk about, budget being a consideration. What's one thing that you don't think you would ever cut from a, like, what's one kind of core, like, hey, we have to invest in this as you think about,
Yep.
planning
Yep.
your race series?
Easy, easy, easy. It's staff at the events. If you
Hmm.
go, if you're run, because here's the thing, a lot of people run these races by themselves. They go alone. It's their first race. No one's cheering them on. They have nobody supporting them. Nobody's holding up a sign for them. And we want people to know, hey, if you come to one of the races and you're running for Hope Story, you're gonna have people cheering you on, cheering in your corner, encouraging you, and you're never alone if you run a race with Team Hope Story. So the thing that we would never cut out is sending staff to. We would never ever, unless something crazy happened, we would never have an event unattended by a staff member. I wouldn't even think about it. Oh.
Okay, yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. Got another question. So what's maybe one thing, and you've shared several, what's maybe one thing that you really wish someone had told you before you, signed up that first cohort, pre-COVID? What's one thing that you really wish you
Yeah.
knew now before when you got
Yep.
started?
Yep. Easy. So the administrative work of growing a charity fundraising team is indescribable. So, like, let's say you have 1,600 people and you're sending them, an email and like everything multiplies. So, if you have 1,600 people and you were to send each of them one congratulations email, that's 1,600 emails. So, if you sent them another email about their fundraising, now you're at 3,100 emails. And so we text all of our runners a video from a child with Down syndrome. So if you have 1,600 runners, that's 1,600 text messages. Next
Yep.
race season, we're trying to send people 3 videos throughout their running experience. So now you're talking almost 5,000 text messages that someone on our staff has to send. So the setting up administrative systems on just how do you respond to applicants? How do they, apply to run with you? How do they accept their bid? And so Pledge It has allowed us to automate a lot of that stuff. But I think the administrative burden and trying to figure out systems and processes would be the thing that was the hardest challenge. And so you have to have someone on your team that's incredibly administrative competent, which I'm not. Oh.
Got it. Got it. And then we got another good question. For someone who's looking to get started, what does that bib application process look like? Is it something
Yeah.
public that anybody can find? Is
Yeah.
it, tips for someone trying to locate, hey, how do I apply to be the first, to enter into my first
Yeah.
race?
Great question. Yeah, I would say they're all a little different. I would say find a race that you're excited about or a race that maybe logistically works well for you. And you can just do a Google search and say, hey, charity running program, New York City or charity running program, Big Sur. And a lot of them are going to have applications that you can fill out. You do typically have to do it quite a bit in advance because, like, they'll be doing it, for for the New York City Marathon 2026. I mean, that application was last year. So for us to apply and all that. So I would say, Google it, reach out if they have a race director or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, Google is your friend here. They're typically going to have some sort of application and, fill it out. I mean, it really is, um, finding the application, filling it out. And I think that's also another important thing too, is when you're going to these races and if you have a team on the ground, you get to shake hands with these race directors. You get to shake hands with the people who are actually, sort of leading out on these races. And I think that's really invaluable to get there and let them know, like, we want people to know, like, hey, we're here. We're creating a good experience for these runners. And also, I hope that you trust us to, hopefully let us grow with you. And so I think building relationships with those race directors is also really valuable.
That's great. So we're at the top of the hour here again. Really appreciate the kind of the time and energy today. Appreciate the audience. We talked a little bit about kind of some of the parting thoughts. So we will, appreciate everybody's time. We'll distribute the slides here for those that are interested and get, if you want to learn a little bit more about kind of what we've been building, what we've been creating. You can certainly go to pledge.org/get started. And again, thanks everybody for the time. Thank you again, Rick, for sharing your time and your
Yeah.
insight from the years you and your team have been building this.